I want you to think about something for a second. Think about the version of you that shows up at work. The way you talk, the things that you laugh at, the opinions that you share, the ones you keep to yourself. Your posture, the tone, the version of your personality that you've decided is appropriate for that room. Now I want you to think about the version of you that shows up when you're with your oldest friends in the world. The ones who knew you before your career, before your title. That version of you is looser, funnier, probably, less filtered, closer to something that feels like who you really are. Now, think about the person of you that shows up at a dinner party with people that you don't know very well, or at one of your kids' school events, or at a family gathering where certain topics are off limits and certain opinions are unwelcome. Think about the adjustments that you make, the volume that you turn up or down, the parts of yourself that you tuck away because that particular room doesn't seem like the right place for them. How many versions of you are out there right now? How many rooms are you walking into every week where you quietly, almost subconsciously, become a slightly different person? And here's the question I've been asking myself recently. If you're a different person in every room, which one is actually you? That's why, when we come back, I'll be making the case for being the same person in every room. I want to be really honest about something up front. I'm not making this case from a place of having this figured out. I'm actually making it from a place of having done the opposite for a very long time and understanding, slowly, painfully, recently, what it costs. I have been a performer my entire adult life, not on a stage, but rather in rooms. I have walked into boardrooms and become one version of myself. I have walked into social situations and become another. I have sat across from people that I want to impress, and I've calibrated everything. My language, my energy, my opinions, my sense of humor, to match what I thought that room wanted from me. And being honest, I was quite good at it. Really good. And that's the part that makes it dangerous, because when you're good at adapting, nobody tells you to stop. They reward you for it. But here's what I've come to understand. Adapting is not the same thing as performing. Adapting is reading a room and being thoughtful about how you communicate. Performing is changing who you are. And it's the distance between those two things where most of us lose ourselves without realizing it. I want to be clear about one thing. This episode is not about lying. It's not about deception. Most of us are not walking around being dishonest in these ways. We're doing something a bit more subtle and, in a lot of ways, more exhausting. We are engineering ourselves. We're tweaking 20 to 25% of who we are, depending on the situation we find ourselves in. And that 25%, that's the part that's killing us. Because maintaining multiple versions of yourself is one of the most tiring things that a human being can do. And at some point, you have to ask, what would it feel like to be just one person? In every room, all the time. Now, let me lay out my argument. I'm not arguing that you should behave identically in every situation. I understand that you don't talk to your boss the way you talk to your best friend, and I understand that context matters. That's not what this is about. What I'm arguing for today is that your core, your values, your beliefs, your sense of humor, your honesty, those things that make you fundamentally who you are, should not change based on who is in the room with you. The way you express those things might shift. The volume might adjust. But the substance should always be the same. Because when it's not, that's when you find yourself holding back an opinion because the room wouldn't welcome it, or laughing at something you don't find funny because the room expects it, or dimming a part of yourself because it might make someone uncomfortable. You're not adapting. You're disappearing. Piece by piece, room by room. And the tragedy isn't that other people don't know the real you. The real tragedy is that after enough rooms, you start to forget too. Today, I'm going to present 4 exhibits, which are 4 reasons why being the same person in every room is not just a nice idea, it is a survival strategy for anyone who wants to live an honest life. Let's get into it. Exhibit A, the tax of performing. I want to talk about what it actually costs to be a different person in different rooms, because we don't think of it as cost. We think of it as a skill. We call it reading the room. We call it professional maturity. We call it knowing your audience. And those are real things, but there's a line, and it's blurry and it's hard to see, but it's dangerous, between reading the room and losing yourself in it. Here's what performing actually costs you. It costs you energy, so much energy. Think about how tired you are the day after being on all day. A day of full meetings, events, interactions, where you had to be a specific version of yourself. The exhaustion isn't from the work, it's from your performance. It's from the constant low-grade computation your brain is running. What does this room expect from me? What should I say here? What should I hold back? Who am I supposed to be right now? That computation never stops. It runs in the background of every single interaction, and it drains you in ways that you attribute to your job or the schedule or the busyness of life. But it's actually not those things. It's the weight of carrying multiple versions of yourself. And the longer you do it, the heavier it gets. I've had days where I've come home completely emptied out. And when I was honest about it, the reason wasn't that the work was hard. The reason was that I'd spent 8 hours being a version of myself that required constant maintenance. That's just not sustainable. And it's not necessary, because the version of you that doesn't need maintenance, the same one that's everywhere, that version has enough energy left at the end of the day for the people and the things that matter in their lives. Exhibit B. The people who trust you the least are the ones who have seen the most versions. Here is something that I've obsessed about over 20 years in my professional and personal life. Those people who trust you are the ones who have ever only really seen one version of you. The people who trust you the least are the ones who have seen you shift depending on the circumstance. Think about the people in your life who trust you completely. I'd bet they have one thing in common: consistency. They're the same person in the boardroom that they are at the barbecue. They're the same person on a good day that they are on a bad day. You know what you're going to get from them. And that predictability, it's not boring. It's the foundation of every meaningful relationship that you have. Now, think about the people that you don't fully trust, not the ones who've lied to you. Those are easy. I'm talking about the ones where something feels off. You can't quite put your finger on it, but you don't fully relax around them. I'd be willing to bet that in most of those cases, the issue is inconsistency. You've seen them be one person in one room and a different person in another. And even if neither of those versions was dishonest, the fact that there are two versions makes you wonder, which one of these is real? And once that question enters a relationship, it starts to erode trust. That's the professional cost of performing. You might think you're being strategic, you might think you're being appropriate, but the people around you, your team, your clients, your partners, they see those shifts, and they might not name it, they might not even be conscious of it, but they feel it. And what they feel is, I don't fully know this person. And you cannot build anything meaningful, whether that's a team, a company, a friendship, or a marriage, on the foundation of a person that you don't feel like you fully know. Exhibit C. You can't know yourself if you're always adjusting. This one is very personal for me, and I think it might be the most important exhibit we'll talk about today. If you spend enough time performing, enough years being slightly different in different rooms, something happens that you don't expect. You lose track of which one is real. I don't mean that in a dramatic existential crisis sort of a way. I mean it in a quiet Tuesday afternoon way where someone asks you what you think about something and you hesitate. Not because you don't have an opinion, but because you've trained yourself to run the opinion through a filter. What does this room want to hear? When you've been filtering long enough, the filter becomes invisible. You stop noticing you're doing it. Your opinions start to feel like they're yours when they're really a composite of what different rooms have rewarded at different times, depending on what you're saying. Your sense of humor starts to feel natural when it's been shaped by which jokes landed in which environments. Even your values, the things that you believe at the deepest level, can start to blur if you've been contextualizing them for long enough. This is why knowing who you are at your core matters so much. Not as an abstract self-help concept, but as a practical, daily, operational necessity. Because if you don't know what you believe, like what you really believe, independent of any room, then every single room you're in gets to decide that for you. And that is not adapting, that's outsourcing your identity. I've done work on this, real work, the kind where you sit down and you ask yourself uncomfortable questions. What do I actually value? Not what do I say I value at work, not what do I project on social media. What do I actually, in the quiet of my own mind, believe? What are my moral lines? What are my ethical non negotiables? Which parts of me are permanent, no matter who's watching? If you can't answer those questions clearly, that's not a personal failing. It's a signal that you've been in too many rooms where you're not fully yourself. And the way back starts with deciding to be one person, everywhere, starting right now. Exhibit D, the freedom on the other side. I want to talk about what happens when you stop performing, because there is a cost to consistency. I'm not going to pretend that there isn't. Some rooms are not going to like the real you. Some people will be uncomfortable with your honesty, your opinions, your refusal to become what they expect of you. You're going to lose access to certain spaces or relationships. You're going to disappoint people who preferred the version of you that was engineered for their comfort. And on the other side of that loss is a freedom that is almost impossible to describe until you felt it. The freedom of walking into any room, a boardroom, a dinner party, a hangout with friends, a family gathering, a podcast studio, and not having to calculate, not having to scan the room and decide which version of yourself to deploy, not having to spend energy maintaining something that isn't real. It's just you being there as you. The same you that was in the last room and the same you that will be in the next room. That freedom is not just emotional, it's practical. It's like getting your energy back. You make decisions faster because you're not running them through a filter. You're building trust faster because people can feel your consistency. It deepens every relationship in your life because the people around you are finally interacting with the real you instead of a performance. And here's what I've found to be the most surprising part. The rooms that matter, the ones that are actually worth being in, they don't want your performance. They want you. The real version, the unedited version, the version that has opinions and flaws and edges and doesn't apologize for any of it. The rooms that require you to be someone else in order to belong were never your rooms in the first place. Now I want to raise an objection to my own case, and that objection is, this sounds idealistic. The real world and functioning as an adult, it requires code switching. You have to adapt. If I show up the same way in a client meeting that I do at a barbecue, I'd get fired. Different situations require different approaches. What you're proposing, Matt, is unprofessional. This is a strong objection to my case, and I want to be careful with how I respond because I think the objection has merit. Yes, context matters. Communication styles should absolutely be adjusted based on your audience. The way I explain a legal concept to a colleague is different from the way I explain it to a client who has no legal background. The way I joke with my best friend is different than how I joke with my kids. That's not performing, that's just communication. Here's where I draw the line. When the adjustment is no longer about how you communicate, but about what you believe. When you're not adjusting your language, but adjusting your values. When you're laughing at something you find offensive because the room you're in expects it. When you stay silent about something you believe because speaking up would cost you social capital. When you nod along with a position you disagree with because disagreeing feels risky. That is not code switching. That is self-abandonment. And there's a chasm between the two. The test I use now is this. If someone who knows me well watched me through a one-way mirror in any room that I'm in, would they recognize me? Not the words I'm using, not my voice, not the formality level, but me, my posture toward the world, my honesty, my values. If the answer is yes, then I'm adapting, and that's okay. If the answer is no, then I'm probably performing, and performing is what I'm asking all of us to stop. Ladies and gentlemen of the listening jury, here is what I know. I have spent years, decades, if I'm being honest, being good in rooms. Good at reading them, good at adjusting, good at becoming a version of myself that each room seemed to want. And I was rewarded for it, professionally, socially, in all the ways that the world rewards people who are easy to be around, who don't make waves and who fit in wherever they go. But fitting in is not the same as belonging. Fitting in requires you to change your shape. Belonging lets you keep your shape. And I spent so long fitting in that I started to forget what my own shape was. Getting it back has been one of the hardest and most important things I've ever done. It meant sitting with questions I'd been avoiding. What do I actually believe? What are my non-negotiables? What parts of me have been performing for so long that I mistook them for real? And it meant making a decision that sounds simple, but is truly terrifying in practice. I am going to be the same person in every room. The same values, the same honesty, the same willingness to say what I think and stand behind it. And I'm going to accept that some rooms don't want that. And those rooms are not my rooms. Being the same person everywhere is not easy. It's not always comfortable. It will cost you relationships that were built on a version of you that probably never really existed. It will close doors that only opened because you were willing to be whomever the room and the people in that room needed you to be. But the doors that open when you're fully yourself, the relationships, opportunities, moments of genuine connection, those are the only doors worth walking through. Know who you are and know what you believe. Know your moral and your ethical lines. And be that person, that exact person, in every room that you enter. Not because it's easy, but because it's really the only way to live a life that actually belongs to you. Before we wrap, I want to move this from the courtroom into the real world and identify a few ways that you might be able to take action on this episode if anything I said hit a nerve. First, do the mirror test this week, and I do this every day. The next time you're in a room, a meeting, a dinner, a social event, ask yourself, if someone who knew me out in the world as I actually am was watching this through a one-way mirror, would they recognize me right now? Not my words, but me. And if the answer is no, notice it. Reflect on it. Ask yourself why. You don't have to fix it, but just notice it. Because I think with most problems, awareness is the first step. Number 2, write down your non-negotiables, not your goals, not your preferences, your non-negotiables. The 3 or 4 things about who you are that should never change based on who's in the room. Your honesty, your values, your refusal to laugh at something you find offensive. Whatever they are, just write them down. Put them somewhere that you're going to see, because the rooms are going to keep coming, and if you don't know your lines before you walk into them, the room is going to draw them for you. Number 3, forgive yourself for the performing that you've already done. We all do it. I did it for years. It doesn't make you a fraud. It makes you a person who was trying to survive and to succeed and who wanted to be liked. And that's human. But today, you get to decide that the performance is over. Not because you've been doing something wrong, but because you're ready to do something better. So, that's my case for today. If this one hit you, if you've ever been in a room where you felt like you couldn't be yourself and either noticed it when you were there or after you left, I want to hear about it. Post your thoughts with #TheCaseFor and tell me, what's the room that you find it the hardest to be yourself? And what would it take for you to walk in as the real you? As always, thank you for listening and for spending this time with me. It means the world. And remember, whatever your case is, don't be afraid to build it and carry it out into the real world.